Hi friends, today we're in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And this is an amazing chapter because in this chapter, Paul lifts up the example of a group of churches and he says, check them out. What they're doing is amazing. And the point he's trying to make is this idea of grace, this concept of grace that the Bible talks so much about, fuels in us genuine love and generous love. And that's what we'll look at this morning. Paul talks about this idea of grace, and he shows how grace and generosity are so closely connected. So here's how he builds his teaching. He's saying, I'm going to show you the example of this church, or these group of churches rather, and how grace was lived out in their lives. So in verse 1, Paul says, we want you to know, brothers and sisters, about the grace of God that was given to the churches of Macedonia. So he says there was a grace of God given to those churches of Macedonia. And so as a result, here's what happened in verse 2. During a severe trial brought about by affliction, their abundant joy and their extreme poverty overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. This is an incredible thing. Think about it. Think about first of all the negative stuff there. Think about severe trials. Think about affliction. Think about extreme poverty. And if you could imagine, maybe take a bucket and just start pouring in, and everything you're pouring in is just dark colored paint. And so you pour in trials, you pour in affliction, you pour in extreme poverty, and what should overflow is bitterness, stinginess, arguments, anger, all of those things that overflow out of being under trial, being under affliction. If you would say, yeah, that certainly happens to me. That's what overflows. But Paul says a grace was given to these churches that what overflowed was actually generosity, that there was abundant joy and generosity, that's what overflowed, and that's the impact of grace in our lives. Now, this is not going to make any sense to those of us that have made our relationship with God a transactional relationship. If we think that God is a vending machine and, we punch in our numbers, we give him something, and so he gives us something, this is going to make no sense at all. And the only way to understand this is to really understand grace. Grace is God's favor given to us freely. See, salvation itself, the thing that we need the most, the thing that restores our relationship with God, both now and in eternity, the thing that keeps us from hellfire, by grace, salvation through faith was given to us for free, that we paid nothing for it. We can't earn it. So the greatest gift that we will ever receive was given to us for free and because of grace. And so when we remind ourselves of that, what overflows to our brothers and sisters here on this earth is free grace as well, that we want to genuinely love and generously give, and that is an overflow of the effect of grace in our lives. Now take grace out of the equation, and what will overflow is the trials and the difficulties and the poverty and all the other issues that we may face. It's just kind of bubbling up to the surface, and that's what will overflow. Now we've gotten good at kind of behavior modification, and we can pretend and smile, but deep down inside we know we're not happy. So take grace out of the equation, and what will overflow is the natural effects of being in severe trials. Not abundant joy, but abundant bitterness and hatred and arguments and all of that. But put grace in the mix and apply grace into our lives, and suddenly our lives are filled with abundant joy and they're filled with generous giving. Into the extreme poverty of their lives, into the trials, came grace. And watch what happens in verses 3 and 4. This is incredible. Paul says, I can testify. So he's saying basically, I'm telling the truth. According to their ability, and he says, even beyond their ability, of their own accord, so no one's forcing them, they begged us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in the ministry to the saints. Think about that. They're saying, please let us give. Please let us serve. Please, I want to give my all. And you can look at that and say, how is it possible that people in extreme poverty, that people going through trials and afflictions, how is it that they're begging? That's the word Paul uses. He says that they were begging, pleading, earnestly saying, please let us give. Please, we want to give our all. And Paul says it's not the exception to the rule. We may look at that and say, oh, they must be some crazy people. No, Paul says this is the evidence. This is the genuineness of your love is tested in how you genuinely love and how you generously give. In verses 7 and 8, Paul says, now as you excel in everything, in faith and speech and knowledge and in all diligence, and in your love for us, excel also in this act of grace. So if grace is in the equation, he's going to give us something to excel in. He's saying it should be evidence in this. He goes on to say, I'm not saying this as a command. No one's forcing you. Rather, by means of diligence of others, I am testing the genuineness of your love. If grace is in the mix, there will be genuine love. If grace is in the mix, there will be generous giving. There will be generous love. It's an incredible, incredible idea. See, I just want to ask you this morning, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, have you thought about the concept of grace lately? Have you experienced God's grace in your life? Do you know His love for you, His commitment towards you, His passionate giving towards you, that He gave His only Son, that famous verse that He gave His only begotten Son. He gave what was most precious to Him so that you could freely receive what is most precious to you, freely. And when you get that concept, and when you remind yourself of that concept on a daily basis, what flows out of you is genuine love and genuine and generous love, rather. So genuine love and generous love. Friends, the world around us needs genuine love and generous love fueled from grace. That's what the world around us needs, because what's bubbling out of the people around us is affliction, is trials, is extreme poverty. You're just seeing that cauldron, and what's coming out is darkness. And what God is calling us to be is so different. Christian life at its very best is not the absence of trial or the absence of affliction or the absence of even extreme poverty. Christian life at its best is in the midst of those trials, in the midst of those afflictions, in the midst of that extreme poverty. Genuine love and generous love pours out of us. That's what God is calling us to. Now, there's a lot that's been said today, so I just want to pause and give you a chance to just soak that in, particularly this idea of free grace given to you. So as the music plays, would you just let the Spirit of God remind you that God so loved you that He gave His only Son so that you would receive the most precious gift ever, all for free. And as you reflect on that, may that bear out, overflow in genuine love and generous love today. God bless you. Here, spend some time in God's presence.